Good morning, welcome to the video. This is how I stay under 10% body fat year round. A few weeks ago, I did a DEXA body fat scan and came in at 8.1% body fat. And at this point, it honestly feels almost effortless. I still eat foods I enjoy, I still work a full-time job, and most of what keeps me lean are habits that I've integrated into my lifestyle. In this video, I'm gonna break down the 5 biggest things that help me stay lean year round. I weighed in at 177 pounds at 8% body fat, but I also wanna talk about something that was unexpected that happened when I decided to push a little further. But right now, it's not time to talk about that. It's time to go lift. All right, just finished up my workout. I hit a chest and tricep workout, did about 4 chest movements and 2 tricep movements, but that's gonna bring me to my first habit, which is to move early and lift heavy. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I'm a huge advocate of training first thing in the morning. On my work days, that's usually about 5 a.m. Today's actually Memorial Day, so I was at the gym at 8 a.m. For me, I train first thing in the morning because it just sets the tone for the day. Lifting heavy is actually probably the most important key to all of this, especially when you're in a caloric deficit. That's what's gonna help you maintain muscle mass, and that's the difference maker from becoming smaller and having a healthy body composition level. Remember, the goal isn't necessarily to be smaller, but rather to lose body fat specifically. And ultimately, the way to retain muscle mass is by consistently lifting heavy weights. For me personally, training earlier makes everything easier, and ultimately that leads to consistency. And consistency is ultimately what's gonna drive being lean year round. All right, finished up my workout, took a shower, made some food, and now I'm gonna bring you to my second habit, which is nutrition. And nutrition is honestly probably the biggest one. Generally speaking, I eat the same meals every day, and honestly, pretty much around the same time. I prioritize protein and eat foods that are generally whole foods. So there's a whole video that I could make on nutrition, and I probably will in the future. So be sure to subscribe if you're not, but focus on your nutrition. Start understanding what you're intaking into your body, because that's gonna be the biggest habit that you need to implement into your life to not only get lean, but to stay lean. And just like my working out, the biggest thing here is gonna be consistency. It's not about being perfect and getting it 100% of the time, but if you do the right thing most of the time, you're gonna find that that's gonna be generally good enough. All right, let's take it into habit number 3. And this one, if you've seen any of my other videos, should be a pretty obvious one from my day-to-day life. I try to focus on my overall daily activity, and specifically for me, step count. So I've found very creative ways to implement getting a higher number of steps into my lifestyle. So I do work remotely, and I do have that luxury, thankfully. But what I've done is I've created a standing desk setup with a walking pad under it, so that way I can walk while I'm doing emails, while I'm taking work calls or meetings, and I've implemented that habit into my lifestyle. Another really cool tactic that I've done personally that has been very successful is I do like to go for an outdoor walk whenever the weather allows, and that's been another really good way for me to just disconnect and have some time to myself. And then my most recent creative way of implementing steps into my life has to do with my newest addiction, which if you've seen one of my other videos, you might already know, but I have developed a little bit of a Lego addiction. So I did make a video on that and how I built a Lego McLaren while hitting 30,000 steps. So if you haven't seen that, be sure to check it out. I'll link it down below. But the overall takeaway is still the same. Find creative ways to stay active throughout the day. Find creative ways to get your step count up, because ultimately those small habits will translate into big results. Now moving on to habit number 4. And this is one that I personally really struggled with when I was younger. And even now, waking up very early in the morning, I do struggle with it a little bit, but I do have certain safeguards in place to mitigate that. But that's gonna be sleep and recovery. So obviously, when you wake up at 4, 5 a.m. every single day, it becomes challenging to make sure that you get an enough amount of sleep. So what I've done to mitigate that is I usually shut everything down around 8 p.m. and I try to fall asleep around 9. And right out the gate, that sets me up for success on the next day. Now, recovery is just as critical. cycle. So when you lift heavy, especially if you train early in the morning, recovery is going to be very important to make sure that your overall performance is higher, but also overall, you can't beat a dead horse. So ultimately, you have to give your body the space to recover, because truly that is when the real progress is being made. All right, habit number 5, which is tracking and trending. So I personally weigh myself on a daily basis in the morning, regardless of what my goals are or where I'm at. And the reason that I do that is because that will give me a good barometer of where I'm at. And now when I do set a goal for myself, I can adjust based off of where I'm going. And what I mean by that is I just track my morning weights on a daily basis, have my nutrition is consistent, like we mentioned, and now I can gauge if it's actually working or not in whatever direction that I want to head into. I like to consider your morning weigh-in as simply having data. And without that data, it's like trying to steer a ship without a map and without a compass. So I use that data to help me head in the direction that I'm going. There's a lot of caveats to that, so I'd recommend not hyper focusing on each morning weigh-in or reacting to it, because there's a lot of variables that can actually impact your morning weigh-in. With that said, what I like to do is track the overall trend. If in 2-3 weeks of doing the same thing, I'm not headed in the right direction, that's when I know I need to adjust. But I don't concern myself with the day-to-day fluctuations. So that's what actually keeps me lean. I move early and I train heavy, nutrition, daily activity and step count, sleep and recovery, and tracking and trending. It really is that simple. It's not flashy, and honestly, my lifestyle is generally pretty boring, to be quite honest with you, but it works, and that's ultimately what matters. And what I'd recommend you do is you find a system that you can implement into your life that works for you, because ultimately, if it works for you, it's gonna help you stay consistent, which is ultimately gonna be the most sustainable method for you. So I hope that this helped. If it did, comment down below which one of these habits you're gonna put into your life. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like the content, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.